What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel for another conversation. And today we're going to talk about why I'm not a Christian and other essays on religion and related subjects. Surely you already know why I'm not a Christian, but today we're going to be exploring another piece of literature, another literary work, and this time it's going to be by Bertrand Russell, and it's of the title "Why I Am Not a Christian and Other Essays." So we're gonna walk through this. We're gonna have some conversations around it, and I'll share some of my thoughts on it. Of course, again, you already know, most of you know why I'm not a Christian, but while kind of walking through Bertrand's words, I'll throw in some of my own. All right, so many of you know the routine already. If you haven't, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, and consider joining or supporting this community, channel, or content in whatever way that makes sense for you. Also, we have some dope merch. Check it out. I actually have to get some new merch rolled out this week based off of a Discord poll. I'm working on it, Kyle. I promise. And also, we have books. My wife's books. Let me get the right side. Can I get my finger where it's supposed to go? There it is. My wife's book, that's Words of a Shattered Mind. It's a poetry book. She wrote that back in 2014. It's available wherever books are sold online. And then also, you have my newest book here, Christ Held Up, which is a very quick read. And so far, the reviews have been amazing. I'm humbled, you know. And Tessa, if you're watching, I promise you, your book is coming. It's literally right there. I have so much anxiety about doing. I'm gonna do it. I am going to do it, and I've literally put it on my calendar to do today so I can send it out. But then also my first novel, Memphis. I'm working on part two as we speak. I haven't had any time to work on it in a few months though now because things have been so hectic, and I don't like that. So I'm trying to figure out a way to rework some things, recalibrate my schedule. But that one is a very healthy read, a hefty read. It's a big book. It's a big book. It's over 500 pages. But it's a great read. If you're into epic fiction, then you're gonna want to take the Memphis Journey. All right. So I've done all of that. Let's jump into this conversation. Why I am not a Christian and other essays on religion and related subjects is a collection of essays by the British philosopher, mathematician, and social critic Bertrand Russell. Published in 1957, the book brings together various writings and speeches by Russell that critique religion and explore topics related to morality, philosophy, and society. The centerpiece of the collection is the titular essay, Why I Am Not a Christian, which was originally delivered as a lecture in 1927. Throughout the essays, Russell employs logical reasoning and empirical evidence to challenge the validity of religious beliefs and institutions. His work is characterized by clarity of thought, wit, and a commitment to rational inquiry. He was a prominent figure in analytical philosophy, known for his work in logic, mathematics, epistemology, and social activism, and he was an outspoken advocate for peace, education reform, and secularism. He was born in 1872 and went to the mysterious beyond in 1970. The early to mid 20th century was a period of significant social and scientific change. Um, Advances in science and a growing emphasis on secularism challenged traditional religious beliefs. Russell was part of a broader movement of intellectuals questioning the role of religion in modern society. And just as a side note here, because this one isn't in my comments, but I know, or isn't in my notes rather. But I know that I've spoken on this channel before about how the Harlem Renaissance, properly known as the New Negro Movement, was pretty much, well, number one, it was literally orchestrated by Hubert Henry Harrison, Black Socrates, an atheist, but it was a movement of secularism, and it was a very powerful movement that spread throughout the Black community for a very long time. In many ways, I have theories that the hip hop movement, which did come out of that, by the way, especially when you start looking back at your five percenters and things like that, the hip hop movement has some roots in that new Negro movement, Harlem Renaissance that was going on, which was an enlightening period. That's what Renaissance means. Even though in public education, when we talk about the Harlem Renaissance, it gets reduced to just the art, just the music, not really correlating the social movements that were happening around the same time that was inspiring the art that many of the artists were actually a part of. Um, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I sometimes wonder, because again, hip hop has its roots in that particular movement, or has some of its roots in that particular movement. I sometimes wonder if hip hop ended up kind of being usurped, if you will, by religious ideology early on to kind of combat that Renaissance movement. Because as you know, vile, for lack of better words, as hip hop gets, it's still pretty highly religious, you know, or at least the language and the imagery is. Um, and so it's a very interesting thing, right? Very interesting phenomenon. All right, so let's get back to Bertrand. All right, so the collection comprises several essays, speeches, and articles, each addressing different aspects of religion and its impact on society. Some key essays include Why I'm Not a Christian, Has Religion Made Useful Contributions to Civilization, Nice People, The New Generation, Our Sexual Ethics, and Freedom and the Colleges, which there are way more than this, but these are some key essays that we're going to focus on. We're going to spend the most time on the titular essay because that's the name of this video as well. And you know, I'll do some clickbaity things sometimes, but I don't want to be too off base. Like last night, our Bible study with the next pastor, we named it "God Likes It Hard," and because we're in the book of Exodus, and God keeps hardening Pharaoh's heart, you know, so it was clickbaity for sure, but actually, it was accurate bait. You're glad you clicked on that bait, right? Yeah. All right. So in the seminal essay, Russell outlines his reasons for rejecting Christianity and, by extension, organized religion. Delivered as a lecture to the National Secular Society in London on March 6, 1927, the essay systematically dismantles the traditional arguments for the existence of God and critiques the moral teachings of Christianity. And again, I want to highlight this date here. This is March 6, 1927, and this is something that he's delivering in London, right? And so, and I'm only highlighting this because I've already started with some black stuff in it, so I might as well roll with it. I just want to highlight that this, at the same time, this is happening over in London, and people are having these conversations in Harlem. These same type of conversations are being had by the black community, and this is for all audiences who are watching. Anyone who's ever thought like, "Oh no, black atheists, no, that's not a thing." Nothing could be further from the truth, and it isn't this like it isn't this timeline where it's like, oh, white folk got it first and then black folk got it later. It's not really how that works. A lot of times we think that's how it works because you're dealing with two groups who are disproportionate in size and disproportionate in representation. So you know, at one point you got a group that's at least 60%, and then you have a group that another group that only represents around 12 to 14%. So you're going to see more of the 60 than you're going to see of the 12 to 14. All right. And so we have to be very careful about those availability heuristics that work there. But no, many times in human sociological evolution, things that are happening as a response to societal pressure, or even a response to societal transformation. And so typically you're going to find types of sparks of those ideas wherever humans are, and wherever humans are that are being impacted by those same type of societal changes, you know. Um, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why I'm going to do one on Their Eyes Was Watching God. Going to do one on that one. And I might do one on the Raisin in the Sun too, because Zora Neale Hurston was a atheist. So we'll talk. We'll talk. All right. Um, All right, so Russell begins by clarifying what he considers a Christian to be: someone who believes in God, in immortality, and accepts Jesus Christ as the best and wisest of men, if not divine. All right, so that's his definition of a Christian. And now he's going to tell us why he's not. His definition of a Christian is someone who believes in God. They also believe in immortality, and they believe that Jesus is the best and wisest of men, if not divine, right? So he has a few arguments, you know, for he refutes the existence of God. And so we're going to walk through these. And ultimately, what he's doing is he's going to respond to popular arguments. So the first one is first cause argument. which the argument posits that everything must have a cause, and thus the universe must have a first cause, which is God. Now, anybody who can think further than a fifth grader should already be able to identify the flaw in that logic. You should be able to see the fly in the soup. It's glaring, right? The fly is waving at you. Russell counters that if everything must have a cause, then God must also have a cause. If there can be something without a cause, it might as well be the universe. The next one was the natural law argument, which suggests that the orderly laws of nature imply a divine lawgiver. Russell argues that natural laws are descriptive, not prescriptive, and that the concept of natural law has been suspended or superseded, rather, by scientific explanations, which I'm inclined to agree with. This is also an issue that we often run into with sociology as well, happening to remind people that, hey, this is descriptive, not prescriptive. Argument from design, which claims that the complexity and purpose in the world indicates a designer. Russell points out flaws in the world, such as suffering and imperfections, which challenge the notion of an all-powerful, benevolent designer. And then just to be quite frank here, when it comes to design, when it comes to the perception of design, this is an entirely subjective experience. You know, because when we think about designs, we think about things that look a certain way, but that thing only looks a certain way to you with your human eyes. These things have different. These things are perceived differently by different by animals with different biological, stuff going on. These things are, these things are the idea of design. Or the idea of the perception of design. We must understand when it comes to trying to put that on the natural world is it's an illusion. When you try to throw design on the world. This is one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of the word create. I prefer the word generate, because it's this idea that, something comes from nothing. And I'm not saying that that something can't come from nothing. I'm just saying, because obviously something's going on, but we haven't gotten there yet, right? And that's where this stuff kind of comes from. This idea that everything is designed. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I have children. I have 4 of them. I've watched them grow. Were they designed? No. And I mean, we are getting into that place where you can do designer babies, I hear, but no, they weren't designed. So when I look at the tree, I don't think, oh, this is designed. I mean, that just seems such a weird place to go with that. You'd have to already buy into this foolish superstition that there's a God who has like a earth factory and is like printing out trees and shit. Like, and I mean, if that's the case, that's actually a less beautiful situation. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know. Well, I mean, godly, that brings in some thoughts. Okay. So, and then moral arguments for deity asserts that moral values require a divine source. Like, you first have to prove that there is a divine source. You can't, that's not how arguments work. Man. Russell contends it's like me saying you can't have spaghetti without a flying spaghetti monster. Having spaghetti requires a flying spaghetti monster. Even though this entire time we've never seen a flying spaghetti monster, and we've been able to get spaghetti without a flying spaghetti monster. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. But Russell contends that morality is subjective and culturally influenced, not absolute or derived from a deity, which you've heard me talk about plenty of times. And then Bertrand also goes on to challenge the perception of Jesus as the best and wisest of men. He highlights instances in the Gospels where Jesus' teachings are, in Russell's view, morally problematic, such as the concept of eternal punishment. And I've taken that one a little further by highlighting the fact that Jesus consistently insulted people, that Jesus physically assaulted people. Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's go there. That Jesus literally urged the poor to give their last to the church. This is something we would frown on today. Jesus encouraged his disciples to abandon their families and told them he would give them new ones if they were faithful to him. And Jesus was a liar. He told his disciples that he was coming back, and he didn't. He also told some of his disciples that they would not see death until he returned, and that was a lie. So no, I don't find any goodness in this guy called Jesus. I don't see it. Help me understand, you know? All right. And so he suggests that fear, particularly of the unknown and of death, drives religious belief, encourages facing life and the universe with rationality and courage rather than resorting to comforting myths. Russell concludes that religion is based on fear and that it impedes knowledge, fosters dependency, and hinders moral and intellectual development. He advocates for a secular, rational approach to life. Now, Bertrand Russell is somewhat of a not necessarily a new name, but I had not looked into his stuff before. But once I started to, it was kind of interesting how much we were aligned on. Very interesting. And so let's pick on up on another one. That was I won't spend as much time on these other ones because that was really the titular one, but I still want to give a little bit more insight, and I kind of want to do the book justice here. So he has another one. Has religion made useful contributions to civilization? And in this essay, he examines the historical impact of religion on civilization, questioning whether it has been a force for good or a hindrance to progress. I think you know my thoughts on this. Um, he argues that religion has not been the source of moral behavior, citing examples of unethical action sanctioned by religious institutions, and discusses how morality can exist independently of religion. He also highlights instances where religion has opposed scientific advancements and intellectual inquiry. Again, and I think I've talked about this with the persecution of Galileo. He suggests that religion often resists change and clings to outdated beliefs, i.e., Project 25 and you know, stuff like that. Project 2025, whatever. He criticizes the role of religion in supporting oppressive regimes and social structures. Points to religious justifications for slavery, gender inequality, and war. Yeah, there. I mean, I don't know how much longer we're going to pretend that religion doesn't play a role in marginalization and social harm. Like this is costly. Like we need to stop because I mean it's not like it's not happening anymore. And examines how religious doctrines can induce guilt, fear, and psychological harm. Advocates for liberation from dogmatic beliefs to promote mental well-being, which is a major thing for me. It's why we do everything we do to make sure that our community is safe, sound, secure, and soft. Oh, that was sweet. Okay. Russell asserts that while individuals within religious traditions may have made positive contributions, religion as an institution has generally impeded progress, and that secularism offers a more constructive path forward. And then I think even with the individuals within religious traditions that have made positive contributions, and this is just from my experience, I haven't done research on everybody, but in a lot of cases those positive contributions have been highly propagandized, have been highly exaggerated, or have just been promoted without interrogation. So when one that comes to mind is Mother Teresa. Did she really do good? Did she really decrease harm? you know she didn't. She didn't. um, but which that for me, that's an issue in marginalized communities. Period, where we often cling to heroes that did absolutely nothing. Um, and that happens when you become subject to the propaganda without becoming a student of the information. And unfortunately, I see way too much of that. I can almost tell when someone's just drinking propaganda Kool-Aid when the words they say are words that I've absolutely heard. And like, no, the same thing you just said, I've heard this from 1,500 other people. And then I'm going to ask you where you got that information from. And then your whole argument is going to fall apart because you just assumed that this was right because everybody says it. And no, you can't do that. I mean, you can, but it's just not a great way to engage reality. He also had one called Nice People. And this one, I was really interested in because in this essay, Russell critiques the concept of respectability and how societal norms often mask underlying injustices. Now, I was not a big fan of the Black Lives Matter organization, um, but I think one of the things that they really did do well is call out respectability politics, which is something that I think that was hard for me to see prior to deconverting. But what he explores um, how nice or respectable people may uphold oppressive systems while maintaining a facade of propriety. Um, he questions societal values that prioritize appearances over genuine morality. This one was hard for me only because like I spent probably the first 10 years of my existence in ministry trying to fight this idea of image, right? Like you have to have this image to be this person, you know. And I wouldn't have known that that was respectability politics then, but that's definitely what it was. You know, you got to look nice whether you are nice or not, you know. Even like the last year that I was a pastor, I'd reached out, told one of my staff people that like I'm like, hey man, I don't want to wear the costume anymore. I don't want to wear the cape anymore. I don't want to pretend to be better. I want to actually be better. And so I got to let this go. But yeah, it's a lot of that respectability politics and a lot just that idea of respectability that makes it really hard for people to notice when someone is like a total danger or a total threat, you know, or a person who's literally just doing harmful things. Well, they're just so nice. This is something I encounter at work. I watch it at work all the time. When a person who's a part of a minority community, you know, complains about their treatment from a specific person in the company, you know, the other people who share the affinity with that person is like, oh no, well, they're nice to me all the time. Surely they're a nice person. You just don't understand them. That's that respectability thing where you're saying because this person is nice to me, they can't be capable of mistreating other people. Number one, that's not logical. Number two, that's stupid. Number three, are you a fucking child? Sorry. Okay. So yeah, I mean I'm on one when it comes to that. Like, oh my goodness. It makes no sense. But you know, he discusses how class structures influence these perceptions of virtue, criticize the tendency to excuse or ignore the misdeeds of the privileged. But then also the other side of that coin is that then people who don't look respectable, people who are not a part of that respectability class, are immediately perceived as having nothing to value or having nothing good to say. Um, and that's just again, yikes! I hate that type of stuff. I honestly do. I'm incredibly averse to it. I like to look good. I like to dress well, sort of. But I never want to be put in that place where people think, oh, Durante's valuable because he has on nice shoes. No, if my shoes are dusty, do you still realize that I have maybe some valuable information? Or if my shoes are dusty, you just like, oh nah, he ain't got nothing to say anymore. See, I don't. That's weird to me. Um, so Russell calls for a reevaluation of what constitutes true morality, emphasizing integrity and compassion over societal approval. Um, he also, one of his essays, he titles The New Generation, where he basically just talks about the attitudes and behaviors of the younger generation of his time, of course, regarding religion and social norms. He observes a shift towards skepticism and questioning of traditional beliefs among the youth, and notes increased openness about topics like sexuality and politics. And again, for his youth, this would have been around the early 1900s that are the people, the youth of his time. So this is around the 1920s, which again, this is that social. As far as in Harlem, we got the New Negro movement happening on, but this is just a social renaissance that's happening everywhere. Industrialization is happening at, and this is why there were more black atheists and that's even hard to say. I was going to say there were more black atheists in the North than in the South, but you find out that's not true. Slavery does a good job of making atheists too. hmm hmm You got to go back and read some of our ancestors' works, man. It's there. It's there. You have to stop accepting the democratic version of Black history. You have to stop accepting the NAACP's version of Black history. What's that other guy's name? I can't remember his name right now, but I'm not a fan. But he every time PBS does a special, they always pull him. No. Number one, you don't learn history through a platform. You don't learn history through a person. You need to get in the weeds of the books, read things, and wrestle with what you're reading so you can form opinions on your own based on the context of multiple variable writings. You know? And I think that's been the problem with a lot of Black history stuff. We've just kind of it grinds my gears because then like it creflows my dollars, man. It TDs my Jakes. It Juanitas my Bynums. It Paulas my Whites. You know, but it really pisses me off because then so much of our history actually gets lost in the sauce, and we think that it's just getting lost because not enough people are talking about it. And it's like, no, it's getting lost because we're only talking about the same things over and over again. Because what we're not talking about history. We're talking about an approved version of history. And that's what happens when religion gets a little bit too much impact and too much control on a narrative. But yeah, so he expresses optimism that the new generation's critical thinking may lead to social improvements. And he wasn't wrong there. Progress over perfection, right? I don't even know what perfection is. And I kind of agree with Russell here that I think there's potential in the younger generation to foster a more rational and just society by embracing change and rejecting dogma. But a part of that is realizing that that's a perpetual truth as long as we can make it one, you know, which means that will as long as we're moving forward, the younger generation will always be the more progressive. And what we need to learn how to do is to support them and to actually start building infrastructures that can help catalyze and accelerate that growth. Okay, good. I got time. In this, he also has an essay on our sexual ethics, and of course, I was going to hit this one. But in this essay, Russell examines societal attitudes towards sex and advocates for more progressive and rational sexual ethics. He argues that conventional sexual morals are often based on superstition and repression. He highlights the negative consequences of ignorance and stigma surrounding sexuality. And just to this point, one of the book reviews that I'm going to be doing very soon is going to be one of Dr. Darrell's books, Dr. Darrell's Ray, because this man is really just a gold mine of information around this idea. And because that book is just about sex, we're going to go there. I might just name that one, Let's Talk About Sex, you know. Let's talk about sex. Now that's too deep. That's too deep. Let me stop. Okay. He argues that conventional sexual morals are often based on superstition and repression. This is true. He suggests that sexual relationships should be guided by principles of honesty, consent, and mutual respect. I believe that. Supports education and open discussion to promote healthy attitudes. And he believes that reforming sexual ethics can lead to happier individuals and more stable relationships. And then, of course, he also uses this essay to address issues on divorce, birth control, and gender equality. He calls for a reevaluation of sexual morals based on reason and compassion, aiming to improve individual well-being and social harmony, which in order for us to do that, we must first come to the conclusion that our approach to sexual morals has not been based on reason and compassion. But see, like, that's also how I lost weight. Like, for those of you who didn't know, I used to be 580 pounds. I lost 380 of myself, you know. But that happened because I realized I wasn't approaching my nutrition with reason. Hello. Yep. And nor was I treating myself with compassion. That's good stuff. Man, reason and compassion. Wow. That might be a t-shirt. All right. So, and then freedom and the colleges. I wasn't going to include this one just from the title. I was like, I don't want to read that. But then I read it and I was like, oh, I got to include it. So just a few main points from this one, which of course he's discussing the importance of academic freedom and the dangers of imposing ideological constraints on education. And so he emphasizes the need for colleges and universities to operate without undue influence from religious or political entities, and advocates for the freedom of professors and students to explore ideas without censorship. Now, I did go to a public university. It was highly religious, highly religious. There's not one um, commencement ceremony where there isn't a prayer, and the speaker is almost always a believer. There is never, ever, ever a survey of the students to ask, are you okay with someone promoting their religion at your graduation? Not once. The chancellor literally led prayers, and we had to take an etiquette class with the chancellor for those of us who were getting the leadership concentration, and you had to learn how to pray right at the table and stuff. Yeah, public university. You're welcome. But yeah, I did have, I'm right. I wrote about one of my professors. Well, he actually wasn't he was an adjunct professor, but I wrote about one of my professors, writing about him in one of my newest books, because he was not a believer and really did not give a damn and dared if anybody would fire him. And he'd say it, I got tenure. What are you going to do? And I loved him. I was a believer at the time. He was highly offensive to other believers. He was highly refreshing to me. I think my whole life I was just looking for people who would talk to me like an adult. And he was one of the first people that I had met who was just like an adult. He had his own opinions. He didn't feel the need to conform to anybody else, and he didn't feel the need to hide his opinions just because you had different ones. Thank you, Mr. Earl. That was his name. Anybody who went to Troy University in Dothan, you might know him. All right. And he highlights instances where institutions have restricted teaching due to external pressures and warns against the suppression of critical thinking and open inquiry. Russell underscores the vital role of academic freedom in fostering innovation, progress, and a well-informed society. The themes across the essays are a critique of religion, an advocacy for rationalism, and individual freedom, social progress, and humanism. And I mean, that's really it. That's why I like sharing information like this, because these are kind of my themes too. Um, Russell's essays have been foundational in modern secular and humanist movements. His arguments continue to be referenced in debates on religion and atheism. He's faced opposition from religious organizations and conservative groups, and was criticized for perceived moral relativism or undermining traditional values. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1950 for his varied and significant writings. Russell's critiques of religion and advocacy for rationalism remain pertinent in contemporary discourse. Issues such as the role of religion in public life, secular education, and the intersection of science and morality continue to be debated. His emphasis on evidence-based belief and individual freedom resonates with ongoing movements for human rights and social justice, including those of the organization that my wife and I are building, called The Bridge in Bridge City Global. Um, Now, why I Am Not a Christian and Other Essays on Religion and Related Subjects is a thought-provoking collection that challenges readers to examine their beliefs and the role of religion in society. Bertrand Russell's eloquent and rigorous critiques encourage a rational approach to understanding the world and underscore the importance of intellectual freedom, which that's really what this movement is, right? It's intellectual honesty, but also intellectual freedom. Discussing this book offers an opportunity to engage with profound philosophical questions and to explore ideas that continue to shape contemporary thought. So, just kind of as I wrap up, because people at work are buzzing me now, as I wrap up, I have a few questions for you. Have you read this book before? And if you have, what were your thoughts on the books? I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments. Did you think I did justice with this little overview that I've done today? And if you haven't read the book, after hearing the overview, are you interested in reading the book? And if so, I'd be interested in knowing which parts piqued your interest. I'm going to be doing my best to at least once a week pull a few books, and there are plenty. There are plenty. Pull a few books from various atheist authors, non-believing authors, secular authors, whatever. That are already written about things that we discuss on this channel and that we deal with on this channel, as a way of helping other people find that content and have new information to wrestle with. Now, there's some people who come on and they don't like that I share books by people that they don't like. Well, number one, I don't know who the fuck you like, and I don't tie myself to that. That's not how I choose books. I don't choose books by personalities. I choose books by content, right? So if that offends you, if I'm reading a book or if I'm doing a cover of a book and it's a person that you say, well, that person is a racist, so I don't want to read their book, then hey, don't read their book. And say, well, I don't want to watch a video of you reading their book. Then hey, don't watch the video. You know, but honestly, what's the utility of you leaving a comment if I really don't give a damn and I'm going to continue to do it? Because the only thing you're letting me know is how you protect yourself from learning new information. That's the only thing you're telling me. You're telling me that, nope, if I don't like a person, I won't read their book. That's, as an academic, I just find that like, what? So no. But no, I hope you all enjoyed this today. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. Consider joining, supporting, or connecting with this community channel or content in any way that makes sense to you. And check out our books and check out our merch. I think that's all I have for you now. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful if you can. I'll holla.